The story I'm going to tell you today is extremely tragic and frustrating at the same time. It tells the story of a love that turns into an obsession and becomes a drama that gradually unfolds before the eyes of many. In many cases, we ask ourselves the question, could this tragedy have been avoided? But in this particular case, that question seems to ring out exceptionally loud, and there remains such an overwhelming impression that in this story, something went very wrong too many times. It is 2012. Hania is 24 years old and lives in Tychy, Poland. Tychy is a fairly large city in Upper Silesia, neighboring Katowice. Hannah lives there with her parents, Helena and John. They have a single-family home in a quiet neighborhood, literally just a few hundred meters from the beautiful Kobior forests. The family gets along very well. They support each other and have a good relationship. Hannah gets along well with her parents and also with her brother Adam, who already has his own family and sons, whom she absolutely adores and spoils. In fact, Hannah really loves children, and one of her dreams is to, in the near future, start a family and have as many as 3 children of her own. But she'll have to wait a while for that, because Hannah is single and, at the moment, has no one with whom to even make such plans. And the fact that she's single actually surprises some people, because she's a gorgeous young woman. She's tall, slender, has big dark eyes, a beautiful wide smile, with straight white teeth, and on top of that, she's incredibly well groomed, always with flawless makeup, and dressed in a feminine style. Every day, she even has her nails done, often with some fancy designs. She goes to the hairdresser regularly and is undoubtedly a woman of class for whom her image is very important. Her impeccably groomed appearance is no accident, as it reflects Hannah's passion for cosmetology. But cosmetology is more than just a passion. Hannah is also studying in this field, and it is precisely the profession of a cosmetologist that is her dream and what she intends to do in the future. Besides being very attractive, she is also well liked by those around her. She has a cheerful and joyful nature and radiant and practically radiates a certain kind of warmth, and everyone who meets her immediately feels a fondness for her. That is why she is always surrounded by a circle of friends and kind-hearted people, and for this reason, the lack of a significant other does not bother her at all. She does not strive to change this situation. Hannah also has a very kind heart. She is incredibly helpful, eager to assist others, and often goes out of her way to sacrifice herself for the good of another person, always doing so without ever expecting praise. At home, aside from pursuing artistic interests, she listens to a lot of music, and her favorite artist, despite her somewhat girlish and delicate image, is Agnieszka Chilimska. Her harder, rock-oriented music, which the young girl listens to constantly, and she likes not only her work, but also Agnieszka as a person, her way of being. She is simply a huge fan of hers. Hannah is definitely a girl with a lot of personality. From a very young age, she has loved competition, and since childhood, she has participated in many contests. She is particularly talented artistically and has won many contests, mainly art contests. But she also enjoys sports and is therefore very active. Hannah is the type of person who can't sit still and do nothing, who is always on the move, always involved in something, and puts her whole heart into everything she does, refusing to accept any half measures. She also loves animals, especially dogs. She has her beloved Shih Tzu, whom she treats a bit like her son, is very close to him, and loves to spoil him. She also has a weakness and something that is very characteristic of her. If someone asks what they associate with Hania, it is undoubtedly this very thing, namely the color turquoise. Hania simply loves this color. It is a sort of trademark for her and a positive obsession. Hania pays absolutely no attention to what colors are currently in fashion, even though she's obviously interested in the topic. And it's turquoise, despite all the trends, that's always with her. It's a constant element of her wardrobe. She has clothes and accessories in this color and practically never leaves the house without something in this color. The interiors she spends time in are much the same. There has to be a whole lot of turquoise accents. The walls, picture frames, and even pillows have to be turquoise. When choosing completely random items in a store, like a trash can or coat hangers, Hania will always pick the turquoise ones. Hania is definitely the pride of her parents, and it's no wonder because she's always been beautiful, does well in school, and on top of that, she's characterized by courage and independence, which she particularly demonstrates in mid-2012 when, at just 24 years old, in line with her education and her passion, she opens her own business. She completes all the formalities and incorporates the company. She then rents a space in a very well-located area where she opens her own dream beauty salon. The salon is located near the Winter Stadium, which has an ice rink. There are many residential areas surrounding it, and it's easily accessible from every part of the city, so she can expect many clients. The salon's services focus primarily on typical treatments for such places, such as nail and eyelash styling, makeup and waxing. Hania takes care of every detail in her business. She really wants to be professional. She sets up a website for the salon. Naturally, turquoise is the dominant color and commissions a professional agency to create the company's brand identity. A logo is designed, and the salon's glass display windows are covered with custom-made graphics. Hania is investing in her business. She properly equips her salon and begins advertising it on numerous industry websites. The salon's offerings are very extensive because the young woman possesses equally extensive skills, confirmed by the numerous courses she has completed. She can even boast a stack of certificates from various training programs, as well as a diploma with excellent grades from a school of makeup and styling. Thanks to her expertise, talent, and dedication, Hania's business is doing better and better. She is incredibly devoted to her work and works very, very hard. During the week, she spends her time in the salon from morning until late at night because the salon is open until 8 p.m., but sometimes she stays there longer. She also works on Saturdays and often even on Sundays, but the effort pays off. She has many regular clients. She also has her own employees, who are also her close friends. Hania is a great specialist, as well as a very good boss. Her salon has become a popular destination for people living in the area and beyond, and one can't help but admire the hard work and dedication of such a young person. The good streak has been going on for several months now. It is January 11th, 2013. And Hania will turn 25 in a month. She is young and free, and Friday night is just around the corner. It's carnival season, and a crowd of young people is getting ready for all kinds of parties to celebrate the end of the week. Hania, however, isn't in the mood for wild fun today. Since she works hard, she'd prefer to spend the evening at home, maybe watch a movie and relax after an intense day. Her best friends have completely different plans. They're heading to a club that evening to do a little dancing, and they can't imagine this night out without Hania, so they persuade her that she has to come along. And though she resists at first, because this isn't how she imagined tonight, She eventually lets herself be talked into it, and since she hadn't planned on partying anyway, for her own and her friend's convenience, she takes on the role of the designated driver. So she takes the girls to the club in her car, a charming and very feminine Smart. The girls arrive at the club, and once there, to get things started, Hania buys each of her friends a drink. She herself, of course, doesn't drink since she's driving. While at the bar, she notices two elegant men. Both are wearing suits and elegant shirts. They're handsome and give the impression of men with class. They definitely catch the eye and stand out from the others in the club. One of them catches the girl's attention in particular, a tall, well-built blonde man who is watching Hania and, on top of that, sending her smiles. Hania returns these kind gestures because not only does she find this blonde man attractive and elegant, but her positive reaction is ultimately determined by the tie the man at the bar is wearing, which is, of course, turquoise. Seeing her positive reaction, the man approaches her, introduces himself, says his name is Michael, and they spend the rest of the evening together in each other's company, having fun and chatting. Time passes, and when the girls decide it's time to wrap up the fun and head home, Michael, like a true gentleman, walks them to their car, and even though it was very nice, it seems that this was the first and last time these two met, because they don't exchange contact information. The night is coming to an end, and everyone returns to their homes and their daily lives. However, 2 days after Friday's party, as the new week began on Monday, while Hania was working at her beauty salon, a tall blonde man from the club walked in completely unannounced. He came straight to Hania, holding a huge bouquet of flowers in his hands. Hania is shocked because she hadn't told him where she worked, but Michael had cleverly written down the address himself. Hania had her car covered with information about the beauty salon. Her smart car displayed not only the name of her company and the logo, but also the phone number and address of the beauty salon. Michael cleverly took advantage of this opportunity and information to surprise the girl. Undoubtedly, he succeeds because his dedication and finesse enchant his sweetheart, and from that moment on, the couple becomes practically inseparable, and the love between the two literally explodes. Romantic dinners, flowers, and one trip after another begin. Hania is in love like a teenager, which surprises many because just a short while ago, on New Year's Eve, one of her New Year's resolutions was, "No guys." However, life decided otherwise. Hania introduces Michael to her parents fairly quickly, but despite her excitement, they aren't entirely impressed with him. Hania's dad, John, describes him as a quiet guy who doesn't say much, but just stares at his daughter and seems not to notice anyone around him, which stirs up such mixed emotions. Because while it's nice that he's so fixated on her, it's also a little disturbing. Yet, he and his wife don't interfere with their daughter's choices. After all, she's an adult and independent, and she has the right to make her own decisions. Michael is 5 years older than Hania. When they meet at the club, he is 30 years old. He comes from a small town in Łaziska Górne, which is located about 12 miles from Tychy. What can be said about Michael is undoubtedly that he is a successful man. He studied at the Silesian University of Technology in the Department of Environmental Engineering and Energy, where he was one of the top students. When he graduates, his thesis is recognized as the best thesis in the field of energy. This is a tremendous honor. His knowledge and excellent academic performance open the doors to a career for him. Immediately after graduation, he lands a job at a very large and well-known energy company. He also quickly climbs the corporate ladder there until he eventually reaches a high-ranking position and becomes the director of technical analysis for investment projects. This position comes with enormous prestige and a truly substantial salary, and he's achieved all of this at a very young age. Financially speaking, he lacks for nothing. He can afford a very nice car, expensive clothes, exotic vacations, and the means to spoil the love of his life. Michael doesn't hold back on living expenses. Even though he lives alone, he rents a very large 2-story apartment in a high-rise. Apartments in this building are quite expensive because the building is new and features apartments with large floor plans, which are rather uncommon in typical housing. Many of the apartments there even have several levels, so the people living there are generally wealthy. So Hania is enchanted. She feels as if she's literally met a prince from a fairy tale. Not only is Michael absolutely crazy about her, he's constantly making romantic gestures. He practically adores her, worships her. He's handsome, rich, and has impeccable manners. But this initial romance is quickly interrupted by some news. Michael, having been in a relationship with Hania for some time, confesses that he doesn't exactly have a clean slate because he has a wife and a child, a daughter. Hania is in shock. Michael hadn't mentioned this at all at the very beginning of their relationship, when he really should have told her. Seeing her surprise and confusion, however, he quickly adds that he is in the process of getting a divorce and no longer lives with the woman he was once married to, and that nothing connects them anymore other than the fact that they share a child. Hania, being incredibly in love, accepts this information and takes it in stride, accepting the situation. Hania's parents, however, become even less sympathetic to her new partner after what they learn. But Hania doesn't care about this at all, and after 6 months of dating, she moves into Michael's apartment. This decision is, of course, driven by this strong and rapidly growing feeling, but it also has great practical significance for Hania. From her new place of residence, Hania is incredibly close to her beauty salon. From that moment on, the couple becomes absolutely inseparable. They only don't see each other during work hours. However, living together fascinates the girl only for a moment, because very quickly it begins to reveal many problems that she hadn't seen in Michael before, or didn't want to see. First and foremost, it turns out that Michael has a serious drinking problem, which is a constant and inseparable part of his life. Michael's job, although it is very prestigious and brings in a lot of money, is also very stressful and demanding, and alcohol is his way of de-stressing. He reaches for a drink very often, and unfortunately, when he gets drunk, he becomes unpleasant and argumentative. Added to these drinking problems is a pathological jealousy that intensifies after Hania moves in. Michael begins to feel an overwhelming need to control his partner. He wants to decide every single step. Because of this, frequent arguments arise between the couple, and jealousy combined with alcohol begins to create an explosive mix. Even the neighbors in the apartment building notice the growing problem. Their patience is tested several times, and they sometimes call the police to report disturbances due to the noise. The police intervene for the first time in October 2013, when the couple has only been living together for a short while. Officers arrive at the scene in response to a noise complaint. Hania opens the door to the police officers. She is reprimanded and accepts the officers' remarks without argument, nor does she report that there is any problem. However, shortly afterwards, the police must intervene once again for exactly the same reason as before. However, by the time they arrive, it is already quiet. But it is not only the neighbors who witness the tension in this relationship. Hania's circle of friends also quickly notices Michael's inappropriate behavior, and especially his outbursts of jealousy. It comes to the point of absurd situations, where Michael provokes a scandal with Hania at their mutual social meetings. If his beloved, for example, returns someone's glance, especially from the opposite sex, or if she looks too long at another man in a public place, or if a male colleague says hi to Hania on the street, it's a guarantee of an immediate argument. Hania has to explain who he is, what connects her to him, where she knows him from. Everyone is a potential lover of Hania's, whether it's the landlord who comes to collect the rent or a delivery person. Even at family gatherings, Michael doesn't hold back. At one wedding, he becomes quite aggressive when someone wants to ask Hania to dance. It doesn't even matter to him whether it's someone outside the family or even her brother or dad. He won't allow her to dance with any man without exception. This comes as a great surprise, and at the same time worries Hania's loved ones, who quickly realize that such a reaction is far from normal. However, Michael's parents step in to help, getting to know, and even a certain kind of friendship develops between them. They reassure her that it will pass, especially once the couple gets married and has children. However, such plans are still a long way off, and Michael is jealous, not only of the opposite sex, but he also cuts Hania off from her girlfriends, of whom she has, after all, many, especially given the profession she practices. Michael, however, isn't interested in this, repeating over and over that they don't need anyone else, and he wants to cling to this rule. Before she met Michael, the girl was extremely ambitious, always seeking further training, and felt the need to become an ever better specialist in what she does. She was proud and happy when she could explore her horizons or acquire new skills in subsequent courses. However, since she's been with Michael, she doesn't go to any training sessions, nor does she participate in any courses or attend demonstrations. For his sake, she has completely given up on her own development because Michael also doesn't agree to it. He doesn't want her to pursue further training, and above all, he does this out of his own jealousy. The man doesn't want to take his eyes off his girlfriend even for a moment. He doesn't like the idea that Hania might meet someone at these classes or not spend the night in their shared apartment. But it's not just jealousy that motivates Michael to prevent Hania from pursuing her development. The second thing driving him to enforce these restrictions is money. On Michael's list of priorities, finances rank very high, if not at the very top. The man literally loves money. In the family archives, you can find photos of Michael lying surrounded by banknotes. Social status, expensive gadgets, exotic trips, basically everything material is his favorite topics to discuss with friends. For this reason, Michael treats Hania's profession with disrespect, and he even goes so far as to belittle the work she does in front of others. He mocks her earnings, often repeating that without a lot of money, you're nobody and you can't do anything. Michael also repeatedly pressures Hania to quit her job and stay home, because for the kind of money she earns at the beauty salon, it's not worth the effort at all. After all, he earns a great salary, and his paycheck is more than enough for them. Michael is so obsessed with money that he completely fails to see and pay attention to the fact that the profession of a beautician is not just a way for Hania to make money, but also her true passion. However, for him, the numbers are what matter most, yet she won't back down on this point. Cosmetology and her own business are things she simply cannot give up, but Hania puts up with other inconveniences, especially the isolation imposed on her by her partner, both professionally and socially. However, this makes her increasingly unhappy. Additionally, Michael's drinking problem is getting worse, and Hania starts showing up at work with bruises, the origin of which she refuses to admit. Her co-workers and loved ones begin to notice strange marks that appear more and more frequently on her arms and even on her neck. When Michael isn't around, she complains that she's exhausted because he drinks all night and goes crazy in the apartment, and in his fits of rage takes it out on everything and everyone. Hania, however, feels the need to help Michael. She feels that only she can pull him out of this state and believes that he will change, seek treatment, and their relationship will finally be repaired. Additionally, after every outburst and fit of jealousy, Michael apologizes, regrets it, lashes out with romantic gestures, and every time he smooths things over and makes Hania actually believe him, she believes his words and that he'll eventually change. Hania's friends want to be her voice of reason and start convincing her to end this relationship, which is clearly becoming more and more toxic and perhaps even dangerous. More and more often, they see their friend in tears and are simply worried about her. But Hania decides each time to give her partner one last chance, hoping that this time it really will be the last one. and these last chances have been becoming more and more frequent lately. However, in the fall of 2014, a serious crisis strikes. Things between the couple are already hopeless. Hania is at the end of her rope, and shortly after, in mid-December, when the relationship has lasted nearly 2 years, Michael once again loses control of himself. He causes a scene in the middle of the night, and something breaks inside Hania, and she decides to leave for good. First thing in the morning, she puts her decision into action and contacts her parents, asking if she can move in with them because she's ending things with Michael and doesn't want to see him anymore. Her parents, of course, without a moment's hesitation, agree to let their daughter return to their home. That very same day, while Michael is away, Hania moves out of their shared apartment, takes her belongings, and moves in with her parents. When Michael realizes what has happened, he can't believe what's going on. He refuses to accept that this is a final decision. He starts flooding Hania with dozens of text messages, and soon after, he shows up at her parents' house and also hangs around the beauty salon, desperately trying to get in touch with his now ex-partner who doesn't even want to talk to him. Hania is unyielding. She avoids contact, but Michael is perhaps even more stubborn and shows up every day at Hania's parents' house. Nothing comes of it, however, and over time it begins to dawn on him that the breakup is not a joke or a test, which makes him angry and frustrated, and this sets off a series of his inappropriate behaviors. 2 days before Christmas Eve, on December 22nd, Michael crosses the line and causes a scene outside the house. He shouts that he won't leave Hania's parents' house until she talks to him. Hania, however, has no intention of arguing with her ex-partner, but he won't back down, so her father, Mr. John, is forced to call the police for the first time to get rid of the intruder, who won't leave them alone. All officers respond to the call, and as soon as a patrol car pulls up in front of the house, Michael immediately runs away. 2 days later, on December 24th, 2014, it is Christmas Eve. Hania is at home with her parents. They are sitting down to Christmas Eve dinner, and while they are celebrating this day, the doorbell rings. Michael is standing at the door and asks to be let in. He seems very depressed and remorseful. He tells the girl's parents that he has no one to spend the day with because his loved ones have left, and that he really doesn't want to be alone during the holidays. He apologizes for his behavior in recent days. He promises Hania's dad that he'll seek treatment and fight his alcohol problem. The girl's parents and Hania don't have the heart to turn him away on a day like this, on an evening like this, so they invite their daughter's ex-partner inside, though they don't have a gift for him because they certainly weren't expecting such a guest. Hania's father reaches deep into the closet for a set of cologne he received on another occasion, and while unwrapping the presents, he hands it to Michael so he'll feel at home. Hania, however, does not seem pleased by her ex-boyfriend's presence. She remains silent throughout dinner, and Michael doesn't say much either. He just stares at Hania and doesn't take his eyes off her even for a second. After dinner, he simply leaves and drives away. The very next day, on Christmas Day, the friendly atmosphere from the previous evening's Christmas Eve dinner vanishes. Michael pulls up again in front of Hania's parents' house. This time, he's drunk and driving recklessly around the neighborhood in his car. At one point, he crashes into the fence of the property next door to the Zakrzewskis. That's the last straw, and the family calls the police again to have the authorities deal with the man's aggressive behavior. Michael escapes once more. His misbehavior goes unpunished. Amid such constant intrusions, accompanied by the sounds of dozens of text messages arriving, Christmas comes to an end. The new year arrives, and Michael slowly begins to realize that Hania will certainly not give in and return to him. The girl comes back to life and begins to settle in for good at her parents' house, where she sets up her own independent apartment on the upper floor. She has a living room with a small kitchen, her own bathroom, and a bedroom, and she slowly begins to rearrange everything around her, but also in her mind. The new year, however, does not bring the peace she had hoped for, because January begins with a series of disturbing and very exhausting behaviors on the part of Hania's ex-partner. Michael drives up to Hannah's house a few more times, but eventually, after a firm reaction from Hannah's brother, Adam, he gives up on visiting that area. Instead, he starts showing up at Hannah's workplace even more frequently. It's closer for him, and there's no male rival there. On January 13th, about a month after the breakup, Hannah shows up for the first time at the police station in Tychy. She behaves rather unusual because, as she claims, she has come for advice on financial matters. She explains that her ex-partner is stalking her and harassing her with messages, and that he has some financial claims against her. She says she doesn't know how to handle this situation and asks for legal advice. The officer speaking with the girl, however, cannot do much to help, as it is not within his jurisdiction, but based on his experience, he gets the impression that there is something else going on here. So he asks Hannah if everything is definitely okay, or if he could help in some other way. Hannah, however, denies it, so she is given the officer's business card with a request that as soon as anything happens, or if she wants to talk, she should call immediately. Hannah takes the number and leaves. A few days after Hannah's visit to the police station, the police are called to Michael's apartment. A man calls whose car was damaged in a rage attack following an argument with a woman. A patrol is dispatched to the scene, where they find a drunk Michael and Hannah. While arguing with his ex-girlfriend, Michael started taking it out on everything around him, vandalizing, among other things, his neighbor's car parked on the street. When the police deal with Michael, Hannah walks away. Michael, however, caught red-handed, feels no remorse. He has no intention of explaining himself, so he decides to bribe the three officers and offers each of them a $500 bribe to let him go. The police, of course, do not accept his offer and detain him for a few hours. At the same time that Michael is being taken away by the arriving patrol, Hannah calls the officer who gave her his business card. She recounts the incident from a moment ago outside the apartment from her perspective, but she certainly does not ask for any help and does not file any charges. January 27th arrives, and Michael once again harasses Hannah, this time in the living room, and he is drunk again, very pushy, and the girl and her co-workers can't handle his rage and resentment. They call the police, who intervene once again in Michael's case. The officer's intervention seems to work again, as the man backs off and goes home, but a few days later, the situation repeats itself. The girls call for help again, but by the time the police arrive at the scene, it's already too late and no one is there, neither in the beauty salon nor in the surrounding area. After each such outburst, Michael has moments of clarity during which he apologizes for his behavior. He comes to the beauty salon with flowers, sends messages full of remorse, but this no longer works on Hannah at all. She even begins to seriously fear Michael, and it's not just her. Her co-workers feel the same way, and even the clients, who often witness the insane behavior of their beautician's ex-partner. It also begins to dawn on her that despite the breakup, she cannot free herself from the man. In the last days of January, for the second time that month, Hannah shows up at the police station. This time, she comes accompanied by her brother Adam. Once again, she tells the police that she cannot reach an agreement on financial matters with her ex-partner. She also informs the officers that her ex has been stalking her all day long. He keeps showing up and harassing her with messages. Unexpectedly, at the police station, while Hannah and Adam are waiting in the hallway, Michael also shows up. The three of them begin to talk, firmly yet calmly. When they finish their conversation, the officers decide to take advantage of the opportunity and the fact that all three are in one place. They ask each of the people present to come in for a private interrogation. However, Adam, Hannah's brother, declares that there is no longer any need for that because they have just reached an agreement, and everyone leaves the building again without filing any complaint against the man. Hannah, mentally exhausted by the past few weeks, decides to seek help and begins seeing a therapist because she is completely unable to cope with her emotions and the current situation. Additionally, she begins to harbor suspicions bordering on certainty that Michael is not only following her, but also eavesdropping on her. And this stems from the fact that more and more often strange situations occur in which whatever Hania says at the beauty salon is immediately quoted in text messages sent to her by Michael, often even word for word, as if he were literally right there. This leads to absurd situations in which Hania, while at work, communicates with her loved ones using sticky notes. They write down any important information they fear Michael might intercept. However, this doesn't change much because her ex-boyfriend is still bombarding Hania with text messages, which he's been sending non-stop for over a month. They alternate between declarations of love and pleas for her to come back, and insults and threats. Michael also uses his financial power to intimidate his ex-girlfriend. He declares that he will buy the building where she has her salon so that, despite their breakup, she will still have to be completely dependent on him. In this very uncertain and stressful atmosphere, January comes to an end and February arrives. February is a very special month because in addition to Valentine's Day, which took place on February 14th, it's also Hania's birthday and she'll turn 27 on February 4th. Hania has a feeling that on this very day, Michael will definitely try some tricks. In fact, she's even certain of it because Michael is the kind of person Ho loves to celebrate significant dates, especially those related to his beloved. The couple met on January 11th, 2013, and throughout their relationship, on the 11th of every month, Michael celebrated their meeting with a bouquet of flowers, for example. So when February 4th rolls around, Hania's birthday, Michael shows up at the beauty salon just as expected. He's sweet and charming and has a gift for Hania, a plane ticket to the Dominican Republic. With this very expensive and sophisticated gift, he asks Hania to come back and to go on vacation with him to start everything over. Hania, however, doesn't accept the gift, refuses to spend a vacation together, and sends the man away, making it clear once again that it's all over between them. It's the 14th of February 2015. It's Valentine's Day, and another day when Michael is almost certain to show up. Hania is in a bad mental state, but her loved ones feel the need to make at least this day special for her and want to take a break from the negative thoughts and problems related to Michael. That's why they have plans with Hania that evening. She, along with her brother and friends, goes to the movies to see 50 Shades of Grey, which premiered the day before. After the movie, they plan to spend the rest of the evening together and just have a good time. Hania, even though it's Saturday, is working as usual at the beauty salon from the morning, but only for a few hours. While she's attending to one of her clients, Michael walks in as if nothing's wrong, carrying a huge bouquet of flowers and a heart-shaped necklace with Swarovski crystals. Hania, however, is very busy, and besides, she doesn't feel like talking to Michael, so he leaves the gifts and simply leaves. Around noon, Hania finishes work and closes the beauty salon because at 1 p.m. she has an appointment with a hairdresser she's friends with, who is going to do her hair that day for the upcoming evening. While her friend is working on Hania's hair, the girl receives dozens of text messages from Michael, who is desperately trying to convince her to meet up. After an intense exchange of messages, Hania finally agrees to see her ex-partner. She informs her friend, the hairdresser, that she'll meet him at his apartment, primarily to return all the expensive gifts she'd recently received from him. After leaving the hairdresser's, Hania heads straight to the apartment to wrap everything up. Hours pass, evening falls, and Hania doesn't show up at the movie theater or at the gathering with her friends. There's no contact with her, and she doesn't come home either. Her brother, friends and parents are very worried. Hania's mom, Helena, has a bad feeling and calls Michael's parents to get a better sense of the situation. It turns out they can't get in touch with their son either, so all the parents can do is wait for their daughter to come home, but she doesn't show up all night. When morning comes on Sunday, February 15th, Hania is still not home. The parents call Michael's parents again, but they still haven't heard from their son. So the four of them decide to go to his apartment to check what's going on. This is a sensible move because Michael's parents have keys to the apartment and will be able to get inside if necessary, which is why they head there first. Hannah's mother, Mrs. Helena, arrives shortly after. The door to the apartment is already open, so she goes inside, and right at the entrance, she experiences her first huge shock. In the hallway, right by the entrance, hangs Michael's body. He has clearly committed suicide. Ms. Helena, filled with both terror and hope, runs deep into the apartment, searching desperately for her daughter, and unfortunately finds her upstairs in the bedroom. Hannah is lying on the bed in a pool of blood. She is wearing shoes and a jacket, lying with her hands folded across her chest, holding a photo of her and Michael. Hannah is also dead. At that very moment, the world of these two families simultaneously collapses and changes forever. Her distraught loved ones, having recovered from the initial shock, call an ambulance to the apartment and the police, who secure the scene of the crime. The investigation has revealed that Michael likely lured Hannah to the apartment where the tragedy occurred. According to the autopsy, Hannah died on Valentine's Day, and no signs of a struggle were found on her body. Investigators therefore assume that Michael attacked her by surprise immediately after the girl had just stepped inside and hadn't even had time to take off her jacket or shoes. The autopsy indicates that Hannah was stabbed twice with a kitchen knife, once in the front and once in the back, damaging her lungs and liver. The first stab wound was 5 inches deep, and the second nearly 6 inches, and both were fatal. After the murder, her partner carried the body upstairs, laid Hannah's body on the bed, placed a photograph of them together in her folded hands, and left the apartment, then went to the casino, where he began a drinking marathon. After leaving the casino, he returned to the apartment, made a noose from his trouser belt and bathrobe belt, and hanged himself on the mezzanine of his 2-story apartment, ending his life in this manner. The neighbors did not hear any disturbing sounds coming from behind the wall that day, and no one realized what tragedy was unfolding in that building. Investigators are trying to reconstruct the events that took place in the apartment. They discover that Michael had a history of aggressive behavior and had even been punished for abusing his ex-wife. And since July 2014, when he was already in a relationship with Hannah, he had even been issued a restraining order by the police due to violence, not against Hannah, but his ex-wife. This fact, along with Hannah's visits to the police station seeking help and several police interventions, leads the girl's parents to begin blaming the officers for insufficient interest in Hannah's case, which, in their opinion, contributed to, and certainly did not help prevent, this tragedy. The police, however, refute these accusations, arguing that Hannah never actually filed a formal complaint with the police against Michael, nor did she report that she was being subjected to violence or threats, which is why they had no legal grounds to take further action. They also dispute the allegations that Hannah did not know how to react correctly in this situation because in 2013 she had already applied to the court for a restraining order, in this case against her and her mother, against one of the family members, and the court granted this request and such an order was issued. However, at the end of 2015, Hannah's parents received her personal belongings, excluding her cell phone, which was never found, and the investigation was closed. Despite this, the family does not give up and sues the police. And on March 29, 2016, a little over a year after Hannah's death, the first court hearing in the case takes place. However, even then, the court agrees with everything that was included in the prosecutor's settlement. It ruled that the testimonies of the relatives were not credible due to their closeness to the victim, and deemed the police's explanations to be credible and logical. The court also states that Hannah was both intelligent and well-educated and had the opportunity to file a complaint with the police regarding Michael's behavior, but since she did not do so of her own free will, this meant that the police could not respond or influence what happened. Hannah's parents disagree with this decision. They feel wronged and hold a grudge against the court and the police for failing to take into account the fact that Hannah was, after all, being intimidated and that she was simply afraid of him. She was afraid of his connections and that with his money, he could really do anything. Her mother, Helena, emphasizes that they aren't interested in compensation. They just want this trial to serve as a kind of warning to others. When fear comes into play, logical behavior is not always a given, and there is certainly some truth to that statement. This case, though there is no mystery to it, nevertheless raises many questions. Above all, whether this tragedy could have been avoided, whether it is bureaucracy and a rigid adherence to regulations that sometimes prevent independent thinking and such a human and empathetic understanding of reality. Or perhaps, in the face of tragedy, it seems comforting to refuse to admit to ourselves that there are certain courses of events that no one would have been able to change. But if Hannah, during one of her January visits to the police station, had filed a report after all, would it really not have happened? Would Hannah be alive today? There is no doubt that there was a lack of professional help for both Hannah and Michael, who was also struggling with a huge problem. On that day in 2015, on Valentine's Day, in Michael's apartment, the lives of two people came to an end, and the world of two families fell apart. In 2006, at the cemetery next to St. Mary Magdalene Church in Tychy, just before November 1st, All Saints' Day, a photojournalist is walking around the cemetery to capture the preparations for the holiday. He takes photos that he later plans to publish in the local newspaper. At one of the graves, he meets two women who are tidying up the headstone, lighting a candle, and placing fresh flowers. The photojournalist asks if he can take a picture of them while they're tidying up, and the women agree. In the photo, in the sunshine, you can see a woman dressed in black, Helena, and her daughter, an 18-year-old blonde in a black turtleneck and jeans, Hannah. No one knows, nor would anyone suspect, that less than 9 years later, Hannah would rest in the same cemetery.